Hey, people, friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears. All right, hi. So I am going to be practicing my Simply React talk that I'm giving in a couple days at React Rally. Hopefully it goes super well. So yeah, feel free to leave feedback. I have actually given this talk before, but the slides are all totally different, and the slides are actually built with MDX, which is this pretty cool thing that you can check out another time. Okay, cool. So yeah, feel free to leave me feedback in the comments and things. And I have like 30 minutes, but I need to finish I don't have a full 30 minutes because the next speaker starts 30 minutes after I start. So maybe like 25 or something. So yeah, I'm at 8:37 where I am now, and I'm gonna start. Okay. Hey everybody, my name is Kent C. Dodds, and I am a software engineer for PayPal, and I'd like to invite you to all please stand up. If you're physically able, stand up please. We're going to do air squats. So I want you to put your arms out in front of you like this. Kind of hard to do when I'm live streaming, but this. Squat down, come back up. This is called exercise. We're going to do 12 of these together. Count out with me. 1, 2, I hope you're really doing this. 4, 5, you're doing thumbs. 6, just kidding. 8, 9, 11, 12. All right, so before you sit down, stretch up high over your head, high as you possibly can. Higher than that. Stretch over together. Awesome. Before you sit down, turn to the person next to you, shake their hand, and thank them for coming to the conference. And this normally takes longer than I wish it did, but it's good that we do it, so. Okay, cool. Thanks, everybody. Please sit down. I think that physical health is really important, and so I like to kick things off here. It also kind of wakes you up, and we're toward the end of the day for my talk, so that'll be good. All right, so let's start out with some expectations here. What this talk is, I'm going to talk about this typical component lifecycle. Give an example of that. Not the component lifecycle, but a life cycle of a component. We're going to talk about how patterns can simplify our components and using composability, and I'm going to give you a challenge. I'm not going to be talking about how to implement the patterns that we're going to be reviewing today. That's for another thing, and I'll reference some material that you can go to learn how to implement these patterns. Sweet. So let's get started. So here is a component. Pretty simple, straightforward. Oh, thanks. What was that? Pretty simple, straightforward component. It's an accordion. So I can click on these and expand each one of these interesting facts about these creatures. So yeah, pretty standard accordion. And so you build this out. It's maybe like 35 lines. And it takes an items prop. It iterates through or maps over those items to render your accordion items here, and you're pretty happy with that. And then a coworker comes by and says, "Hey, wouldn't that component that you built was pretty cool. I would like to have an accordion in my part of the app, but in my part of the app, I actually need that accordion to open above. Here you have it opening below. Can we have that open above?" And you say, "Yeah, sure. We'll just add a new prop. Above is true." And I can't do that. I guess there's a weird. Oh, it's like I'm swiping. Okay, I got to figure out how to disable that. Boo. Yeah. This is why we practice. So we have our above is true, and now we can render things above. So this amounts to just a little bit of logic in your render method. Now you have to change which direction the hands are pointing. You render the items above if above is true. So you're all set. It's not too bad. And then somebody else comes to that person and says, "Hey, how did you get that accordion on in your UI? It's pretty cool." And they say, "Oh, well, this person did it. Could you go over and ask them if you can use it? You say, yeah, totally, please use it. This sharing is a good thing, right? So they say, awesome. But my use case is a little bit different. I don't want it below. I don't want it above. I want it to the right. So you say, okay, I'll make a right is true. And now we're using CSS grid. And so we just change the direction of the grid. And now things are laid out this way. And so it's fine. It's not that hard, but now your render method's starting to look a little bit more complicated. So before this component was maybe 30 lines of code or something, and now it's grown to 40 or 50, and now every single time you go in to make a change, you have to account for these different use cases, which isn't a big deal. I mean, we got to ship code, and so it's just kind of starting to irk you a little bit, and you're thinking, I wonder how we could simplify this. Well, somebody else comes in and says, hey, could I add a little bit of logic, because I want something to be, I want this same thing, except I want these to be on the right side and that to be on the left. The content should be on the left. And you say, okay, well, we could do left is true, but now I'm thinking we have a right is true, left is true. What do we do? So we're going to change things, actually. We're going to refactor it. Now position is left, not a refactor. This is a breaking change. Everybody updates their stuff, and it's no big deal. And so now we have position left, and we have support for that. Cool. And then somebody comes to you and says, hey, listen, that accordion component is pretty cool. The original that you had there with it rendering below is fine. But I have some, like a use case where I want to only allow one to be open at a time. So can we do that? And you say, sure, single is true, and then we'll add some logic to allow only one of those to be open at a time. And we can close them all up. And yeah, that works out. It's just in my handle click, I'll add an if statement here, and not too big of a deal. And then somebody says, hey, I need to change the logic as well. They can open as many as they want. They just can't close them all. They can only close down to one. So I can't close this one, but I can close it after I've opened another. And so you say, okay, yeah, that's more if statements, but yeah, not a big deal. And then somebody says, hey, I actually want both of those behaviors, prevent close and single. And you say, oh yeah, great. The current logic just needs a small refactor, and then we can support both of those. So then they say single is true, prevent close is true. And now you've got this UI where you can only have one open at a time, and you can't close the one that you have open. So that's working out pretty well. People are pretty happy with this. And then something terrible happens. Somebody realizes that this interaction is basically like a tabs component. And so they say, hey, I want singles true, prevent close true. That's working fine, but I want this to be rendered like a tabs UI. We make it render like a tabs UI, and you say, no, could you just copy and paste it so we don't have to mess up this render? They say, no, we got to be dry. And they're like all going on you all over about being dry and how important that is. And okay, whatever. Yeah, fine. You can, I'll tell you what, add a method to the component that is called render tabs. And in there, you can put your stuff. And then in the main render method, you say if this.props.tabs, then return render tabs. Otherwise, do what we were doing already. You say, okay, that's fine. That at least it's not adding a bunch of ternaries around or whatever. It's pretty isolated there. But your component is still getting quite large, and it's handling way more use cases than you originally intended. But you're happy about this generally because you're thinking, well, I mean, we're really helping the company move forward. We're shipping. That's important, and we're glad about that. But you're still kind of feeling uncomfortable that this accordion is now supporting way more use cases than you want it to. And somebody comes and says, hey, I want that rendered to the top. And you're just like, I'm done. And somebody just makes a tabs component that renders to the with position top. And now you have two places where you have a lot of duplicate code, which is technically fine. But there are a couple problems with this typical life cycle of a component. And there's like only one real destination here. You continue adding different aspects of this accordion to handle different use cases. So here we have the accordion items. We have a title. I mean, I've got to fix that. That's going to be a problem. We have a title, an open title, contents, disabled, and you name it. There could be a closed title. There could be, you want the hands pointing in a different direction, or whatever. Lots of different use cases for the items that now you have to retrofit your data to suit the rendering roles and responsibilities of the thing that you're trying to render, of the component that you're trying to use. So you're mapping your data, and that's like pretty annoying. And then here in our UI, we've got the items, or position, single and prevent close. You've got an open trigger, a close trigger, a title class name, contents class name, so you can do custom styling. You have an on trigger, so when one opens, I want to know when that happens. A close class name, open class name, a render expand all button. Those are my favorite. Render X. Just so many different props that are specific to certain use cases that are piling onto your accordion. And this is problematic for a couple of reasons. First, the bundle size and performance are not super great. So originally you made this 30-line component that did exactly what you wanted it to do, and it was pretty small, and like the bundle size of your application only increased enough to compensate for the use case that you had. But now, as more use cases have piled on, you're adding more code to this component, and you're only using this fraction of the code, but you're adding more code to suit other use cases in other parts of the app, or entirely different apps. And that can be pretty frustrating. Another problem is maintenance overhead. So you're starting to maintain parts of code that you don't actually, like use cases that you don't actually have. And so when you're going in to make changes, it's kind of hard to be certain, like, if I make this change, is that going to break this use case? Or like, where do I add the code? And when people want to come in and contribute, they're not sure exactly where they can add code. And that can be pretty frustrating as well. Implementation complexity. So the more use cases you're having to support, the more complex your component gets. And that comes with a lot of things. And one of those is bugs, surprising bugs that just pop out of nowhere because the code is of significant enough complexity that it makes it hard to maintain this project. And bugs creep in a lot easier. And API complexity. This is one of my least favorite. So the more props that, like, every single prop that you add to this component is adding to the complexity of the component. For consumers, there's a bunch of props. Some of these are one-off use case props that only one person will ever need, but you still need to document these props. And as people are going in to contribute and things, they're considering these use cases and they're not sure they understand them. And so the process of learning your component becomes a little bit of a arduous task as well. So that just makes everybody sad. Nobody likes this. This is what Jen Creighton calls an apocalypse. I think that's fantastic. It's, yeah, hilarious. So what if I told you that all those components that you saw, that I demoed for you, are based on the same 37-line component? So let's take a look. This is the 37-line component. We got an accordion. And we're not here to look at the specifics of this implementation. This is just in general. This is actually the component that is being used. We have a state reducer and an on-state change handler. Then we have some state to keep track of the open indexes. And then we have a mechanism for getting and updating that state and handling when the item is clicked. And then we're using a render prop here with this.props.children. So the specifics of all of this are kind of the how we implement these things that I'll mention some resources later. But this is the base component that supports all of those. And by building our component in this way, we come with a lot of advantages. And I'm going to show you those advantages in a little demo here. Totally forgot to put this in that way. There we go. So huge thank you to Evis for creating Code Sandbox, because it's best. And we're going to use this to look at the different things that we can do with this implementation of our accordion. So we have our base accordion there. That's that 37-line component. And here we're rendering just a regular accordion. That's our original version of the accordion that we created in the first place. So if I want, remember the first person came to us and said, hey, I want to render things above. And so you say, okay, great. I want you to copy my accordion. It's like 20 lines of code, and just move the button below the contents. And then you can actually change the finger to point from down to up. And now you've got exactly your use case that you're looking for. And they're like, great, wow, that was easy. Okay, yeah, and I can understand this code. That's not a big deal. And then somebody else comes and says, hey, yeah, I liked it above. I actually now I need it to be on the right. So you say, okay, that's fine. We've got this accordion item. That's how it's laying things out with CSS grid. So we're going to set direction to horizontal. That's going to apply different CSS for us. And now we can have it point left. And then when it's not open, we'll point right. And then we'll just swap this title to come here. Cool. Okay. That works. Works all right. Nice. Yeah, that wasn't too hard. And then somebody says, hey, I want it to be on the left. And you're like, okay, yeah, take their version and you just move it down here and then swap these hands to go the other way. Okay. Yeah, cool. All right, that's pretty easy. So now you have a fair amount of duplicate code, and there are things you could do to maybe take this accordion and make it dynamic based off of some props and things, so that it can support multiple of these rendering use cases. But the fact is that you didn't have to change the base accordion to do this, because the base accordion applies inversion of control. So it gives the consumer the control over how things are being rendered. And so now I, as a user, can go ahead and render things however I like. And I could add all the logic that I want. And that's one of the things we love about the composability of React, is we can do things like this and compose things together, so I can have an accordion that supports multiple rendering use cases without having to make changes to the base accordion that other people are using who don't need those different rendering use cases. In addition to that, if there's a specific prop that I want to add to the accordion button, then I can simply do that. I just accordion button add an on click or something, and I have total control. If maybe I don't like the accordion item styles or the accordion button styles or something, and so I can use a completely different component, and I don't need to change the base accordion because I have control over rendering here. And so then somebody comes to you and says, hey, yeah, let's go back here. I kind of liked the original, but I want to support a different logic here. So I want to only have one open at a time. And you say, awesome, we support a state reducer. And for your state reducer, it's literally a 3-line function, which you can check this out later, how it's actually implemented. But with this 3-line function, you can pass that to the state reducer prop, and now you only have one open at a time. And this is also using inversion of control, where it's calling into the user code to know what to do for itself. And so here we're just, the user is getting control over how the state is being updated when there's a state update. Cool. And then somebody says, hey, I want to change the logic as well. I want to prevent close. So we'll just do this prevent close. And now I can't close it, but I can open one and then close that one. And I can get that use case as well. And then with another really short function, we have this combine reducers to get both of those. And now I can have only one open at a time, and I can't close the one that's open. Cool. So we're loving this. We haven't had to make any changes to our 37-line base accordion component. We just expose some inversion of control type props that allow the consumers to have a lot more control over what's going on with the logic updates, as well as how this thing is being rendered. And that's saving you a lot of headache and the consumers of your project a lot of headache, because this literally has 3 props. It has a state reducer, the children prop, and then an on-state change if somebody wanted to know when state can change. And that's it. So there's not a whole lot to learn about this component, but it's still wildly flexible. And now somebody realizes, hey, this is pretty cool. That's actually very much like a tabs UI. And so they say, hey, I could copy this, but they want to have a couple different use cases, the tabs UI. And so we're going to leverage React's built-in composition model. We're going to make a tabs component. We'll make a base tabs that does this combine reducers thing. And it also can accept a state reducer. So we'll combine all the reducers, and they can, people using base tabs can also provide a state reducer if they want to and have that applied. And we're composing the base accordion with our base tabs, and now we can have a tabs component that uses base tabs and provides a children prop for the tabs UI. And so all this is doing is it's creating a component that has the logic of a tabs UI, but the UI can be provided by the consumer. So let's go ahead and take a look at what tabs would look like here. Cool. We've got things rendering in the way that we want to, and then somebody comes around and says, hey, I want tabs buttons to be below the items, and so you just literally move them below, update some CSS, and you're in business. So that's the thing that I totally love about building things in this way, is it allows you as a consumer to have a lot more power and flexibility over the component that you're using, and it allows you as a component producer to support a ton of different use cases without having a really complex implementation or API. So if you are interested in resources for learning how to do these things, then this this Level Up in React, this Advanced React Component Patterns course on Egghead is for you. I just threw this up here for anybody who's new to React, probably start here. But Advanced Component Patterns, it's also available on Front-End Masters, where you can learn how to implement these and many more patterns. And I wanted to add a word of caution just before I wrap things up. So what if this is all that you ever will need for your accordion component? Let's say that we built this accordion component, this 37 lines that's super flexible, and we used it like this, and we shipped that, and for like a year, that's all we ever needed, was just this one use case. Well, you just added some complexity to your code base that was totally unnecessary, and future maintainers of your code base are going to be kind of confused. They're going to think, okay, so which part of this component is important? What use cases are important to continue to support? And that additional complexity does come with a cost. All abstraction comes with a cost, and that cost is complexity. So I think it's really important, and I want to stress the importance of you ain't gonna need it, yagany. You want to make sure you weigh the benefits and the costs and focus on optimizing for deletability. And so you have a couple people come and say, hey, I've got a different use case. If it's just one if statement, then yeah, just throw an if statement in there. But as the use cases start piling on, you can kind of develop an intuition for when it might be a good idea to start abstracting things in a little bit differently, so that you can avoid the growing abstraction pains, and you can refactor things to a simpler API. One of the nice things about React's composability model, as well as these different patterns, is that you can take your current implementation, re-implement it using these patterns, and expose the exact same API. And so you can iterate your way to a cleaner API without having to do a full rewrite or anything. So try to optimize for deletability, and don't go all in with the idea of solving all edge cases before you know that you're going to have them. And that's all that I have for you. So please use patterns that simplify your API. Patterns like state reducers, control props, providers, compound components, render props. There are many more, and this is the challenge. I'd like to invite each of us to go and rediscover more. One of the cool things about computer science is we're always applying something from the like distant past to the current present. And so lots of the things that we are discovering today are actually not discoveries, but applications of things from years ago to our current problems. So look for opportunities where you can apply old use cases to or old application or solutions to modern problems. Thank you very much. Yay! I should probably fix that. I'll do a little bit of polish on these slides. Like this one, I want to put those, organize those a little bit, but yeah, so this some of these things need a little polish. I want to disable this swiping thing, which is cool on mobile, I'm sure, but not cool here. Yeah, don't like that. But any other feedback from folks, I would appreciate any feedback that you have for me. Can you double click to highlight terms instead of click dragging? Yes, I can, but I would like to click and drag. So yeah. But thanks for the suggestion, Jonathan. Any other comments or suggestions or anything? How did I do on time? I think, yeah, 23 minutes, 24 minutes. That's great. So I don't have to go quite as fast, which is good. But nobody's going to get mad at me for ending early. So yeah, I think that's okay. Where can we find the demo? Let me send you a link to the slides. Simply react.net, li.com. That didn't link it. Goodness gracious. Come on, Google. I thought you knew the web. Did that link it? Yeah, there we go. Can you make a short video just for inversion control? Short video. Oh, actually, Raphael, I do have a video that you might be interested in on my dev tips. If you look back on, let's see, it was yesterday, API flexibility through inversion of control and composition. I talked about that. Hopefully that's what you're looking for. Any other thoughts or comments or questions before I wrap us up and then go hang out with my wife? Oh, Raphael, you saw it. So you have some specific questions that I didn't cover in that video? Oh, okay. Cool. Well, everybody, thanks for your feedback and for watching and stuff. And wish me luck on my talk on Friday, 3 days. Hopefully it goes super well. And I will see you all later. Goodbye. This is awkward. I could use my dev tips thing, but that's kind of weird. So I'm just gonna cut it out. Goodbye.